Plates are a lot of fun. They really are a lot of fun. How many of you have ever eaten a meal off of a wooden plate? That is more than I thought. And how did the food taste? It tastes way better, doesn't it? Yeah. And by the campfire outside? Yeah, if you're not a very good cook, just serve them a meal off of a wooden plate. They'll be so impressed with your skill that they won't notice that food is, burnt or underdone or something like that. That's as good as my jokes get. So if you don't laugh at those, it's going to be a long night, isn't it? Yeah.
And if they don't like it, the plate may end up in the fire.
Yeah, it might end up in the fire. There's a person in our club that made a set of plates and puts them in her camper for when she goes up in the mountains. And so that's my joke with her. If you're up in the mountains and too tired at night to do dishes, you just wait and do them the next day, right? That's what you guys were all thinking, I know that. I heard a laugh in the back. That's two jokes. Mike Mahoney got me started on plates. I took a class with Mike in 2010 at Craft Supply in Provo, Utah, one of Mike's 5-day signature classes. And one day he invited the class to his house for lunch. This is back when he lived in Provo. And so we went to his house, we saw his shop, saw his collection of roughouts, or his pile of roughouts, I should say. He told us some stories about some of the pieces in his collection. And then the highlight for me was we ate pizza off of plates that Mike had made. And Mike said a couple of things during that lunch that just stuck with me. And one of those is, he said, what better way to impress friends and family than to serve them a meal off of a plate that you have made? And that stuck with me, and I think I use that usually in my demo write-up description. And then the other thing he said is he hoped if he was ever invited to any of our houses for a meal that we would eat off of plates that we had made. So challenge accepted. I went home, I cut up some plate blanks, let them dry, and we've been using wooden plates in my house since the following year, 2011, so about 13 years now. I make a couple of different standard size plates. And even though I call this a dinner plate demo, it's really any wooden plate, right? So I make 3 standard sizes, I guess, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if you want to call them that. So where's my camera? Where should I hold this? So my breakfast plates, they're 7.5 inches across. Works great to hold a cinnamon roll in the morning. You can use this for appetizer, hors d'oeuvres, snacks. We use this size plate probably more, well, not probably, I know we use this size plate more than any other size for dessert, because it'll hold a piece of pie or a cake or a brownie or something like that. So these plates in my household, this size, gets used, I'm not going to say every day, but probably 4 out of 5 days. So very useful size. So then that's my breakfast plate. This is my lunch plate. This is what we'll make in class tomorrow. This is 9 inches across. It'll easily hold a sandwich with chips, a burger and fries. You can use it as a side salad with dinner. And sometimes I'll call this a senior dinner plate, because you get a little bit older, you don't eat as much, and you'll be surprised how much food you can put on a small plate like this. The plates that we use every night in my house, they're plastic because I have to do the dishes, but they're 9 inches. So every night this is the size we use. And then this is what we'll make tonight. This is my full-size dinner plate, 10.5 inches across, and nothing says you can't use this for desserts also, just saying. All right. Oh, speaking of that, before I forget, Chris, you said that you're accepting donations for your EOG fund. Is that right? Is it all right if I donate a plate to your EOG fund? So I have a, where's my camera at? Just have a silver maple plate that I'd like to donate. I signed the back of it and dated 2024, so.
We strongly encourage people to sign and date their pieces as well, so, and thank you very much, I appreciate it.
My pleasure, thanks for having me. Oh, there you go, didn't want to forget that. I process my own blanks, so a tree gets cut down, I'll go get some of the wood and I'll cut it up for plate blanks. If you do that yourself, if you process your own that camera, hold it down. Oh, hold it down like this.
Like that.
If you process your own blanks, quarter sawn is the best wood to use. It'll be the most stable. Quarter sawn is where the growth rings are perpendicular, 90 degrees to the surface. So remember, this is a plate that's going to get used. It'll get washed. It'll dry out, washed, used, all that stuff. Quarter sawn will just be the most stable over time. You can use any wood in the tree, but just know that after a while, might take a few years or whatever, that plate could start rocking a little bit on you. So if you can get quarter sawn, that's the best. Think about that. Think about something though that, oops, I keep wanting to move this. If I want to get a dinner plate from here, typical dinner plate is 10 to 12 inches. If I want to get a dinner plate here, another one here, you know, there's going to be waste in the middle for the pith. There'll be waste on either end. So now you're talking a good sized tree, 25-inch diameter at least. That can get pretty big, heavy, got to have a bigger saw and all that. So if you're not able to handle something that big, then this is your, try and not get the glare, this is your second best choice. So just take one slice on either side of the pith. So now a 12, 13-inch diameter tree, a lot smaller, I can easily get 2 dinner plate blanks out of it. The center section right in between them, maybe that's where you get your breakfast plates or your dessert plates. Try and avoid, do it this way. Oh well, it doesn't matter. Try and avoid taking a second slice away from the pith. Just take one slice for your dinner plate because the growth rings are going to be more quarter sawn, if you will. The farther away you get from the pith, the more those growth rings are going to start flattening out, and that's when you can get a plate that can rock over time. It doesn't mean, once it rocks, doesn't mean you have to throw it away or whatever. I joke with Robin and I say, well, put those in your camper for when you go up in the mountains, but it's going to rock a little bit on you because it's not as stable. Now you can flatten it afterwards, and that's easy enough to do. Just put it on, piece of paper, sandpaper on a table, flatten it back and forth, and flatten out your foot if it does that. But anyway, try and just take one slice on either side. And this just shows you quarter sawn is not just only 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock position. You can take it in any direction. If you have a really big log, then you might be able to take a couple extra slices like this. But just, again, the farther away from the pith that you get, the more you have a chance of that plate moving on you because those growth rings are going to be flatter. I use my chainsaw and I cut a slice on the tree, and then I take it to the bandsaw and I cut it round. And this is actually how I process my blanks, just like this. I don't hollow them out. I don't start rough shaping them or anything. I used to do that, but I had a couple that warped a little bit on me, or they develop a crack on the rim. And so now I go to turn that, turn that plate, and that crack or that warp just affects my size, my design. So maybe instead of a dinner plate, I got to make a lunch plate instead or something like that. So I would much rather just dry it like this, and then I can inspect it and decide which side do I want to be the top and the bottom. I can look at the edge, see if there's any cracks and that kind of stuff. But I have a chainsaw. I have 2 chainsaws, but one of them has a 25-inch bar, so it'll cut pretty big logs. It's a Steel 500i fuel injection. You guys all got to get one of those. It's so fun to use. This blank that I brought, you can see that the growth rings, they're not 90 degrees. They're a little bit cockeyed, aren't they? So where do you think this came from the tree? Think it was quarter sawn? Or do you think it was one slice off, one off? Yeah, this was one slice off from the pith, from center. But it's still going to work just fine. I think I've used this wood before out of this tree, and it actually makes kind of a pretty plate, so that's why I brought it. But just wanted to show you the growth rings like that. Okay. Thank you. So after I cut it round on the bandsaw, then I'll coat the outside edge with my greenwood sealer. I used to do the top and the bottom. I used to coat the top and the bottom also. But when I'm coating all these blanks, it's at the end of the day and I'm pretty tired. And it takes a lot more greenwood sealer to coat the chainsaw rough surface than it does the bandsaw surface. And so yeah, so I just do the edge anymore and not the top or the bottom. Haven't really noticed a problem doing it that way as opposed to sealing the whole thing. If it's a bowl that I've roughed out, I'll seal the whole thing, but on my plate blanks or platter blanks, I just do the outside edge. If it's a really highly figured piece of wood or maybe a crotch or something like that for a platter blank, then I'll go ahead and I'll seal the top and bottom. But usually on my plates, I don't do that. I might get a crack on the edge here, but this is plenty big enough. I've got plenty of wood. I can trim it down and get rid of that crack. Mm-hmm. I use Anchor Seal 2. Yeah. I don't like the Anchor Seal 1 anymore. I have problem with blanks cracking on me. So the Anchor Seal 2 is like the original formula. And I get the winter version. They make a winter version, so yeah. Did you have a question?
Dry things before you, like when you cut that like that, how long until you would turn it?
So how long do I dry a blank before I turn it? If you go by the rule of thumb that people say for every inch of thickness, allow 1 year to air dry. My typical blanks, I like about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. So I'll let them dry for a couple years before I do anything. This one's been drying since December 2020. So it's 3-4 years old. If you make a plate too soon, you'll know it because it'll warp on you. It'll move on you. So, I need that. Yeah, if you guys got any questions, just fire them out. Let me know. All right, so I'm going to get started. Now, you might have seen other people demo plates. I know you've probably seen Tom Wersing do his platter demo. There's some similarities, but I'll point out the differences between a plate and a platter. I think in my demo write-up, I said that don't think that a plate is just a small platter. There's enough other differences that you need to be aware of than just size. Size is one of them, but there's other differences. So a lot of people, when they go to mount a plate or a platter, they'll put a faceplate on the top, or they might drill a hole for a screw chuck. And those methods are fine. I've used those methods for years, but I've switched to mounting it between centers. So that's nothing new for you guys. You've seen people mount stuff between centers. The reason I did that is I had a blank one time that was just a little bit over 1 inch thick, and I wanted to make a plate out of it. I didn't have enough thickness to run screws into that. I was afraid, screws going too deep, so I thought, well, how else can I do this? And this is the obvious choice. So I've got a step center in my headstock, and I've got a revolving center in my tailstock. But I want to point out a couple of things with this. I guess maybe I didn't bring it. Or no, I got it up here. If your tail center has that cone on it, if you can take the cone off, take it off. Because that cone will just drive itself deep. It's just a wedge. It just drives itself deep into the blank. And again, if you've got a blank that's not thick enough, if you don't have that extra wood to get rid of that divot that this makes, that can affect your design and size. Yes, sorry.
So if you haven't figured this out, a lot of them have a hole in the body of the revolving center, and you just need to stick a rod in there, and then that cone piece will just come right off.
Yeah, the Powermatic is like that. There are some revolving centers that this part is permanent. If it is permanent, if you can put something over the tip, a nut, make a wooden plug or something to keep that from a washer will still let part of the point stick out. But if you can do something to keep that point from penetrating into the wood, again, if you're using a thinner blank, that can be important. The other thing I've done on my revolving center, I don't know if the camera will show this, but I've taken the point out of my revolving center. So not only did I take the cone off, but I took the point out. And again, that point will stick into the wood probably 1/8 of an inch. And that, again, if you got a thinner blank, that can you'll have to get rid of that divot somewhere down the road, and that can cause you problems. So I took that out when I make plates.
Why do you have your stamp setter in
Good question. Because I'm going to turn a tenon on this, and I can just look at that and kind of eyeball the size of my, and also in a demo, it saves me time not having to get the knockout rod and stuff like that. That was a great question. Question was, why do I have my step center in the chuck instead of just directly into the headstock? And that's the only reason why. The Sorby does. I don't know about all the others. I had a Penn State before this, and yeah, it just goes right in on a Vicmark chuck anyway. It does. I don't know about the other chucks, and it'll just Nova also will do that, and it'll just grab right up around the rim here.
And they make some too, just specifically for fitting.
Yeah, I've seen that also. They make some for fitting right in a chuck.
Can you help, sweetie?
What was that?
Well, he's, yeah, right now he's mounting a board, and how many times can you watch somebody put a
You're not on mute, by the way, whoever that is. All right, so I've got a dry blank now, and oh yeah, you had a question, Steve. How do you make sure it's perpendicular and aligned? So first of all, I've marked the center on both sides, and now I'm going to look at this and I'm going to decide which do I want to be the top and the bottom. And this piece is pretty flawless, which is another reason why I brought it. I don't have any cracks around the rim. I don't have any cracks around the edges. So really it's a toss-up which one I want to make top and the bottom. If I had a little bit of a bark edge or something like that, I would make that the bottom. And then when I turn my bottom profile, that bark edge would get removed. If I had a crack on the top, now that becomes my bottom, and that crack would get turned away. But this one is pretty clean, so it doesn't matter. So how do I get it aligned? Just by eyeball, really. So I got a center point in my headstock. I've got the center marked on both blanks. So what I'm going to do, I'll just bring that up, and now I'm just going to kind of rotate this and see, is this wobbling or is this straight? And I can just kind of tweak it like that to get it, because it'll pivot on that center point. That's pretty good right there. Just like that. That's all I do. Okay, so. No. Do I ever turn a shape other than round, like a square plate? Not yet. I want to, I just haven't got around to that. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I've just arbitrarily decided that this will be the top and this will be the bottom. So what I'm going to do is turn a tenon on the top that then I can reverse the blank and grab it in the chuck and start working on the bottom. So I'm going to make a quick tenon on here, and I just want to show you how quick that is. It's easier. I started out trying to make a recess, but the tailstock and tail center and everything gets in the way because I have a dovetail chuck, so I have to create a dovetail recess. And I even took a tool and I ground a dovetail angle on it and all that. And then I said, well, why am I doing all that when I can just look at it this way instead of that way and just create a tenon? So I started doing tenons, and it's just so much faster for me. If I put my face shield on, will you guys still be able to hear me? Will it echo and all that? Test 1, 2. Okay, good. Makes it louder. All right, let me just. Yes, because I can see what I'm doing right here. Yep. Question was for Zoom, do I always turn the tenon on the tailstock side? And the answer is yes. All right, a bunch of different ways to turn a tenon. I'm just going to use a bowl gouge and have at it. I'll make sure that's tight for you guys. He goes in the back row. Okay, so I'm just going to eyeball the size of my tenon to my jaws, a little bit smaller, Doesn't have to be exact. I don't measure. That'll work. I can go a little bit smaller yet. I do need a flat spot right here for the chuck jaws to register against, and I need to create a dovetail, so I just use a skew for that. Let me just raise this up a bit. You could use a spindle gouge to cut this recess. You could use, I don't know, whatever other tool you've got.
I
did. So I cut in, and then I just pulled the skew towards me to widen that enough for the jaws. I want to make sure that this surface is flat, so then I just take my ruler and set it up there and just try to eyeball and make sure my ruler is in line with the ram. If my ruler was sitting up at an angle, if my ruler was at an angle like that or like that, I would know that this surface is not flat. And it's pretty good right there. Okay, so I'm done. So just that fast, I've created a tenon. So just as fast as your faceplate or your screw center. Okay, we don't need that anymore. When I mount a blank, I like to have the gap in the jaws going up and down, and then I like to line the grain up and down as well. And then that way I get equal bite on side grain and end grain. If I had it cockeyed like that, then I could get uneven grip, and it could dig in more into side grain than end grain, or vice versa. How'd I do? Pretty good. So, like I said, I don't measure that. I just eyeball it, and I just need to grab that, and I'm ready to go. Okay, so this is going to be the bottom. First thing I need to do is just clean this surface up. I'm not going to do my final finish. I'm just going to clean it up because I want to make a pencil mark on there. And it's easier to draw a line on a smooth surface. Okay, so everything spins. So there's a couple different ways you could do this. I could do a pull cut where I just bring the tool towards me, but you know, that can get kind of bouncy. So I'm going to turn left-handed, and I'm going to use the lower wing, wherever that camera, you're fine. I'm just going to use this lower wing. I'm going to push straight in towards the tailstock and basically just do a scraping cut is really what it is. And I'm just looking to get rid of the chainsaw mark is all. And I apologize for the cleanup crew, but we're not done yet. There's a lot more to go. So I'm just using that lower wing, and I'm just pushing straight in. Okay, if I want, I can do a pull cut now. Pull cut will take a little bit smaller cut, but it'll leave a smoother surface as well too. But again, I'm not going for my final surface here. And I really don't need the whole thing cleaned off, but I did. Let's see how I did. Yeah, good enough. Just want to make a pencil mark is all. Before I make that mark, see I got a little bit right here. That's okay. I'll get rid of that in a minute. That's going to be in my way actually. I need that to come out just a little bit. I need a cleaner surface a little bit, a little bit farther out. That feels better. How'd I do? That's better. So that's a pretty piece of wood already. Have you guys, anybody in here, heard of a turner named Bill Grumbine? Don has. So this cut that I was doing, Bill came up, or he's the one that I I learned the term from. He calls this, the way I was cutting this, or the way I was holding the tool, he calls it the 45, 45, 45. And what he means by that is, if I had the tool in line with the blank, if I just swing the handle out 45 degrees, that's 1. If I drop it down from parallel, if I drop it down 45 degrees, that's 2. And then if the flute is completely closed, but I open it up 45 degrees, that's 3. So he calls it 45, 45, 45. And what that does is it puts this, you're cutting just down from the tip. It's like the sweet spot of the gouge, if you will. And that just is a nice controlled cut like that. So shout out to Bill. He passed away a couple years ago from COVID, but that's where I saw one of his videos, and he was doing that, 45, 45, 45. I'm going to true up the outside rim, but I think I'm going to do more than true it up. I think I'm going to go for my final diameter right now. So on my dinner plates, I make my dinner plates 10.5 inches, and I think this is about 11 inches. Let me get rid of that nub right there, first of all. So I got about a half an inch that I'll remove when I true that up. I'm going to get rid of this little bump right here, because when I put my tape measure across, I don't want that to be distorting my reading. You know, that could be pushing the tape measure out just a little bit, giving me inaccurate reading. This bump here wasn't bad, but that's all I need. Okay. So I'm going to do a left-hand cut again, make sure it doesn't hit. And I'm just going to stand to the side, and I'm just going to basically ride my finger along the tool rest and just clean up this surface. I don't care about any tear out on the top side, because that still will be turned away. So I'm going to drop it down 45, kick it in towards me 45, and open up my flute 45, and then just run it across the tool rest. If you want to see if this surface is flat, the tendency is to touch it like this, right? Everybody does that, right? Do you ever get a splinter or anything on your finger? Use the back of your finger. Use your fingernail. You'll never get a splinter on it. And I can tell that I'm not flat yet. I'm going to move the tool rest in a little bit. If you're not used to, everybody tells you don't move the tool rest with it lathe on, so stop it if you're not comfortable with that. All right, so let's see how we are doing. Okay, I got about 1/8 of an inch to go. And how's my surface look? Still have a little bit of rough spot there, but I'm going to do something now. I'm going to switch to a smaller tool. It was kind of nice to watch Keith Gottschall's demo last month when he was doing his offset platter, because he said some stuff in his demo that I say in my demo as well. And it made me wonder if Keith saw my demo one time and that's where he picked it up, but I doubt that. But so if you're getting a rough surface on here, I was just trying to hog away the wood, right, and try and get it down to close to round. A lot of times doing that, you can get a little rough surface on the end grain. So what I'm going to do now, and what Keith talked about, a couple of things you can do to improve that surface. First thing you can do is go to a smaller gouge. Oops, here, should I put them? Where do you want me to put them? Okay. So I'm going from a 1/2 inch bowl gouge to a 3/8 bowl gouge. A smaller gouge takes a smaller cut, so less chance for big pieces to get torn out. My smaller gouge has a 45-degree bevel, and my bigger gouge has a 55, so it's a little bit sharper bevel angle. So it should cut through the fibers instead of trying to rip them off. So that's two things. Smaller gouge. Of course, you got to make sure it's sharp. The couple other things you can do is speed up the lathe rotation, so make it go faster. but you slow down your feed rate. So as I cut this, I'm using a smaller tool. I'm going to speed the lathe up a little bit until you guys get uncomfortable. And then, no, I'm kidding. And then I'm going to just slow my feed rate down, and the shavings will be, half the size of what I'm getting right now. Now, when I was doing this, I was cutting left-handed, but I'm going to stand in front of it now. I've lined up my tool rest parallel with the ways. I want to make sure that this surface is flat. So I'm just going to look right down and watch what I'm doing to make sure that I'm cutting this square across. Okay, so we'll try this. So again, I'm doing that 45-45 again. It just is automatic anymore. And you can breathe while you do that cut also, by the way. So the shavings are a lot smaller. And how's my surface? In this light, it looks great. I missed a spot? A rough spot right there? I still have just a little bit more to go. Not yet. What's my width on this? 1 1/4. My finished height is 1 inch. So I will lose some of that. I bet if I take one more cut, I'll lose enough of that's not going to matter. But yes, I would be. Otherwise, you have to be aware of that. I'm not quite square either. It's a little better. Did I get rid of it? Most of it? That'll be fine. And what's my diameter? Oh, on the money. On the money. Okay, I can take those off now. All right, guys, so I'm right at my 10.5-inch diameter right now, which is my finished size. There is just a little bit of rough spot right here, but once I bring this down to final thickness, that should go away. Okay, so now at this point, we need to mark out the size of our foot. I think everybody, tell me if nobody has heard this before, but on salad bowls, I think it's agreed or common whatever that the base diameter for a salad bowl should be about 1/3 of the overall diameter. Has everybody heard that? So 30 to 35% for a salad bowl. On a platter, a little bit bigger, about 50 to 65, 50 to 70, something like that. One of the differences, if you Google this, Google says that the difference between a plate and a platter is used to serve food, and a plate is used to eat food off of. So if this was a platter, and I just had, say, a 50% diameter foot of my overall, that would be fine because I'm just setting that platter down on the counter and people are just picking up food off of that, hamburger bun, a roll, whatever, right? But on a plate they're going to be eating off of. And so a plate needs a much bigger foot, 65 to 85%. So the reason is, I don't know if that zooms in. So on a plate, if somebody's trying to stab a piece of food out towards the edge here, we want to have support underneath that. If I had a 50% diameter foot, then that plate could tip over on them and spill their food. And if you talk to Mike Mahoney, he says if you're over in England, that's not such a bad thing because their food isn't all that good over there. So if you spill a little bit, it's no big deal. But over here, if somebody's going to be stabbing food out here towards the rim, we want to have support underneath it. So on a plate, 65 to 85%. So I make different size plates, and I just have a chart that I've come up with that I've written all my measurements down on. You know, if it's 6 months down the road and I want to make a lunch plate, I don't have to stop and think, how big do I make the foot, how wide of rim do I, and all that. So I just wrote all this stuff down. While I was doing this, I was just calculating percentages of base diameters. And happy accident, what I found is that once I have my final diameter, it doesn't matter if it's for my shape and size and everything a bowl, once I have of a plate, once I have my final diameter, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, doesn't matter. If I come in 1.25 inches from the edge, that gives me the perfect size foot. So I'm going to come in 1.25 inches and make sure you're measuring across center. You don't, you know, obviously if you're measuring up off center, that could throw you off. So 1.25 inches. Make a mark. So for a dinner plate, that is an appropriate size foot. 1.25 inches actually gives me about a 75% diameter foot. So I said 65 to 85, I'm right in the middle. And that should be 8 inches. Right on the money. And like I said, doesn't matter, dinner plate, lunch plate, breakfast plate, come in 1.25 inches, bingo, you're right there. Okay, so now at this point is when everybody else, but I can't be like everybody else because you've seen everybody else do this, so I got to show you something different. At this point, everybody else would create a recess right here that they would expand their jaws into. Is that right? Well, except for you, you had a bead on yours, so that was nice. I like that. Let me just say, a lot of people would create a recess right here that they would expand their jaws into, and that works fine. I did that for a number of years, but there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to change that. One of them is and I didn't bring any plates like that. That recess is fine, but sometimes I had a problem when I was shaping the top side, and I'd go too deep, and I'd you know, you could see light through the bottom, right? But one day I was washing a plate, and even though I had a real shallow 1/16 of an inch recess, it was collecting water down in the bottom. And I didn't like that. It wasn't hurting anything. I mean, we've been using plates for 13 years, and that doesn't bother it, but I didn't like that. And I thought, well, what else can I do? So I started thinking about, how do I make salad bowls? Well, with salad bowls, I have a tenon. And then I'll shape the outside, I'll grab that tenon, I'll hollow the inside, but then I have to reverse it a third time on my vacuum chuck or cold jaws or whatever to remove that tenon. And I thought, well, I don't like that either. I'm trying to cut down the amount of times I have to remount this. So I said, well, I do like the idea of a tenon instead of a recess. What if I made a bead as my foot, but then I turned that bead into a tenon, and that bead is my foot and it's my tenon all in one. So it works great. So that's what I'm going to show you guys now. So I'm going to make a bead right here. I've got a beading tool. This is a D-way beading tool. And if you haven't seen these before, they're used with the flute down on the tool rest. My left hand is just going to hold it tight on the tool rest. The bevel is kind of pointed downwards. Yeah, well, that's going to be awesome, man. So the bevel is angled downward just a little bit. And as I want to make the bead deeper, all I have to do is raise the handle, and that kind of pushes in, makes it bigger. As I do that, though, as I raise the handle, I'm also going to wiggle it just a little bit back and forth so that I can cut the sides of the bead. So pretty much a beading tool, what it is it's a scraper. It's going to scrape a bead. But it's pretty quick and it's pretty slick. So let me show you how this works. I've got different size beads. This is a 5/16. I've got 3/8 that I use. I've got a 1/4 inch that I use for my breakfast plates. So really I've got 1/4 inch, 5/16, 3/8. They're all just a little bit bigger for my different size plates.
D-Way actually sells it either individually or as a set.
Yeah.
The other nice thing about the D-Way tool is it's incredibly easy to sharpen.
Yeah. It is easy to sharpen. You know, the way he tells you to sharpen it, I believe, is he says, hold it like this on the grinder, but I do it this way. And I tilt my grinder up and I grind like that. The problem that I had like this is if I held it like that or like that, if I didn't hold it exactly parallel, I'd end up grinding more off one wing or another. So I said, well, what if I do it like this, and I grind it like that, and that gives me a straight across grind. And Patrick, what did you have to say about? Yeah, but I'm sorry, I brought 5/16. It's at home. Or, no, that's my 1/4 inch I brought. Sorry, it's at home. To be honest, I can't tell a whole lot of difference between 3/8 and 5/16 anyway. It's only a 1/16 of an inch difference. I'm gonna hold it tight on the tool rest. I mean, that's my line for my foot. And I'm going to just slowly raise the handle, and as I'm raising it, I'm also going to wiggle it back and forth. And I don't know if does the camera zoom into, I don't know that you need to see, but you can see how the curlies are coming off of each side. Now, something I want to point out, can you guys see a flat spot right there? Or can you see a flat spot right here? There is a flat spot right there, right? Because I flattened the bottom. Once that flat spot is gone, then I know I've gone the full curvature of my bead, full depth. Just like that. Now, what else I like about a beading tool, you could use a skew, you can use a diamond point scraper, spindle gouge if you're good with that and all. What I like about the beading tool though is nobody wants just one plate. They want a set of plates. And so if you make a plate, I'm just warning you, don't be surprised if your significant other says, that's nice, where's the rest of them? And so what's nice about a beading tool is when I'm making a set of plates, like this, when I make a set of plates, that bead is the same size on all of them. And it's quick. Now, one other thing that I do, because this is really a scraper, the other thing I do that seems to help a little bit is now I'm going to raise the handle even more, and I'm just going to start on the top of the bead and slowly scrape this side, start at the top, and scrape the other side. Just sometimes you can get a rough surface creating the bead, so this just seems to help a little bit. So I'll start on the top, just gently cut down that side, and cut down that side. And that usually improves the surface. That looks pretty good. Nice. So just that quick, I've got my foot. All right. Since that's my foot, that means that's the only place that I want to be touching the table, right? So I need to remove some wood here. I need to remove some wood here. So let's just do that real quick. A couple different ways you can do that. You can do your pull cut again. You can do a push cut. You got to make sure you don't hit your bead though, right? So what I do is I'll rest the bevel right up against that bead so that I'm not hitting the bead, and then I can just do a push cut. And I'm just trying to get rid of some wood right here. I don't care what the surface looks like. Careful when you exit right here, because you can get some a piece blowing out on you, tearing out on you, so just whittle it away. Okay, I need to remove this wood in the center here. What I like to do is, with this center part, I like to create a real shallow curve to it. Real shallow curve. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can do that as well, right? So one of those is, again, I could do a push cut, so I can rub the bevel against the bead, just kind of swing it around, and then I can do a push cut towards center. I think my tool is a little bit high. My thing isn't as stiff as this. Okay. So I could do a push cut towards center. All of that for that. But that's usually doesn't leave the best finish because I'm cutting into end grain, right? End grain, side grain, end grain, side grain. So it doesn't usually leave a very good surface. So I could try a shear scrape. So I could do something like this. Of course, you got to make sure you stop before you hit your bead right. And that's okay. That removes wood. And it usually doesn't leave too bad of a surface. That's not too bad. A little bit roughness right there. But it's quick and it's easy. Another way, which is the way that I do it, is I use a bottom bowl gouge. Are you guys all familiar with the bottom bowl gouge? So instead of a swept back grind, instead of the wings being pulled back, it's not quite 90 degrees. There we go. So the wings are not swept back. They're not pulled back like an Irish grind or something like that. And they're not exactly 90 degrees. I've just brought them back just a couple of degrees. But now the way this works is the flute, now I point the flute more upright. And as the wood comes down, it's coming down and it's really getting just a sheer cut because it's the flute is almost straight up and down, and that wood is coming right down like this, and it just takes a real fine slice off of it. Now I could do it this way. I could go towards center like this, but to be honest, I'm used to starting at the center and pulling the tool towards me. Just force a habit. And I'm also not used to using a handle when I do it either. At home, my dust collection shroud is right here and the handle gets in the way. So one day I took the handle off and I said, you know, that bolster looks pretty much like a handle, and it works real well for me. It's a small cut that you're taking, so I have more control this way instead of holding a handle out like this. So I'm gonna pick up the cut and I'm gonna just bring it towards me. Let me get this on center, or get this to where it's cutting. Have you guys used a bottom gouge before on bowls or anything? Do you have any trouble with it bouncing or not leaving an even surface? Have you ever had that? Little learning curve. I think the key to using a bottom bowl gouge is your feed rate. Slow your feed rate way down. Because it's taken such a small cut, such a slice, you can't force it through the wood. It's not going to take a heavy cut. It's just going to take a small cut. So just slow down, let the wood come to the tool. I am cutting on the right wing. When I push it towards me, I'm cutting. I don't know if the camera will zoom in. Can you zoom in and I'll do slow-mo? Everybody likes slow-mo. I don't know if it'll show up though. I don't know if you can see that. But there's I'm cutting on the right wing. That was a real teeny cut. I just lost it in the shavings. I'll try and keep my hands out of the way here. Am I going to be all right like that? Okay. Okay, so I'm picking up the cut, cutting on the right wing. So my thumb is in the way, isn't it? You can't really see anything. Okay. My thumb's still in the way? Okay. So a nice slow feed rate. I am going way deeper than I normally do. I got to put my hand in the way, sorry. I'm used to using a couple of fingers because my thumb usually gives out. Now, I told you that I like to do kind of a curve like that. We're going to fix that. So I like it to be, the center point here, I like it to be just a little bit below the surface, and then get just a little bit deeper as it comes towards the bead. Just purely aesthetic, just the way I do it. If I want to get a deeper cut here, I can either do like I started and put my hand way out here, which was a joke. All I have to do is just pull the handle towards me a little bit, and that makes it cut deeper. So I'm going to pick up the cut, and I'm just going to gradually pull the hand. This is way heavier than I normally do, sorry. Let's just start over. And then I'll show you how it really works. It works so much slicker than that. Okay, let me try again. And I apologize if my hands are in the way. If you feel it starting to bounce, usually if you just stop and let the wood get cut, and it'll smooth out. So my left hand is just holding it tight on the tool rest. It's still a heavier cut than I like to do. Way heavier. Okay, it caught right there because I'm starting to get a big cut. We're going to stop right there. I'm going to apologize because that is a way heavier cut than what I wanted to do. I don't know if the camera shows it though, but it is a clean surface. But unfortunately, that's a lot farther below the surface of the bead than what I wanted. So you guys are going to have to hang tight for a minute. Speed it up, speed the lathe up. Yeah, it's bouncing a little bit. The lathe is bouncing a little bit. We might run into this in class tomorrow. So I like to only have about a 1/16 of an inch gap right here between the bottom of the plate and the tool rest, and I'm more than that. So no problem. The way to fix it is we'll just take our bead farther down. So it's just contingency plan here. Getting there. Do you guys understand what I'm doing by taking the bead, by cutting the bead a little bit more? I'm bringing the foot up more. Getting there. We can actually even just do this. Okay, how do we do now? Okay, that's much better. Let's go ahead and clean up this. Okay, now we're back to where we ended up. So I've got some wood right here that's next to the bead that I need to get rid of. So a couple of ways to do that, of course, is I can use my bowl gouge again, rest the bevel against the bead, and just swing the tool around. And now I'm going to use that lower wing to just kind of scrape some of that wood away. I could do it that way. But what I usually do at home is I use a skew as a negative rake scraper. And what I like about this is the point of that skew will get in real close to the edge of that bead, and it kind of defines the bead and pops the bead, if you will. My skew, it has a curve to it, but like about the first 1/8 of an inch, it's flat. It's angled, but it's straight. So it's straight, and then I go into a curve. And what I do with that then, so first of all, I can get right up tight to that bead and just swing it around and scrape that area smooth. Then what I can do is I can use this as a scraper and just scrape the bottom. If I had a rough surface, if I had little bumps and undulations and stuff, then I can just push the handle away from me, as I push the handle away from me and move it along the tool rest, I'm using that whole cutting edge, which is sharpened, and it has a burr on it, right? Now, unfortunately, I've got that, so there's a little design modification we just made. We're just going to leave that in the interest of time. But see, I can now push the handle away from me, and that cutting edge just made its way down the skew.
What about making that inside cut with the lathe in reverse?
Yeah, I've thought about that. That's not a bad idea also. Yeah, so have the lathe going in reverse and go this way. Certainly could. I don't know why I started doing it this way. Okay, scraping doesn't leave as clean a surface as cutting. Everybody knows that, right? But what's nice is this is all side grain, or face grain if you will, and it sands real easily, so real quickly. All right, let's just check this. So we're going to make a different design foot. How's that? And I need to remove some of that wood, and we'll pick up where we left off. I have to make a whole set like that. I will say at home, that has only happened like maybe once. So of course it would do it here. Oh, look at that. Cool. Okay, I don't know if you guys can tell, but my ruler is rocking just a little bit. So that means I'm touching right here. So we can get rid of that a couple ways. That doesn't want to turn on me. I can use this, and I'm just going to cut that away right now just to carry on with my demo. Got a little nub right there. We really got off track there, didn't we? There we go. Okay, now it's only touching the bead. I've got a little bit of a gap there, and then it gets deeper as it gets towards the bead. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. All right. Now that we've got that established, let's go ahead and cut this rim. On my dinner plates, I make my dinner plates 1 inch tall, and I'm going to mark out a 1/4 inch thickness, 1/4 inch rim thickness. So we'll see how, coming right close to the edge there, aren't I? Nice. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but I've got the top of the plate marked, and then I got a 1/4 inch down. And I like to make my plates pretty much a 1/4 inch thickness all the way through. It's light, it feels good in the hands, it doesn't feel like a slab of wood. You make it 3/8 of an inch, it feels heavy, it feels chunky to me, so 1/4 inch works well. All right, so from the bead to the bottom of my mark, that's where I'm going to shape my cove. I like a simple cove. I know some guys will make a OG profile right here. I've taken Glenn's class a number of times. Hi, Glenn. And I don't like it. As soon as I got that plate home, I made a cove out of it. To me, it just feels fat. When you go to grab the plate, it just feels fat. I like this curve right here. Trying to get the orientation. You're fine. I'll just do this. I like a cove, just a simple curve on the bottom, because it gives my fingers a place to pick up the plate. With an OG profile, it's got a little bump right there, and my fingers hit that bump. I personally just don't like it. On a plate. On a platter, it's great, but on a plate, I like a simple cove. A cove is simple to cut, it's quick to cut, it's easy to cut, it's simple to sand, it's quick to sand. You can do your pull cut, you can do your push cut. So I'm using my big tool, and I'm just going to try and get rid of some wood right now. Okay, so I got rid of a lot of wood. I said earlier that I'm going to turn this bead into a tenon that I can grab in my jaws. So I need to get rid of some wood right here for the jaws to grab onto. So same thing we did on the inside, we can do on the outside. I can use my gouge, rub it against the bevel, or rub the bevel against the bead, swing it around. But again, at home, I'll just use my skew. And I can just follow that bead. And I can just do a scrape. I need this surface right here. I need this surface right here for the jaws to be flat, for the jaws to rest up against. So we'll just check it that it's flat or slightly undercut, and I nailed it on the first try. Let me get rid of my pencil mark. And again, I like the skew because the point will get right up into that bead and kind of define the bead. So I need to create a tenon now, right? I have dovetail jaws, so I need a dovetail tenon. So remember, I told you the first part of my skew, it's at an angle, but it's flat. So what I can do is just rest it up against that flat spot and just create a tenon, a dovetail, just like that. And my dovetail is probably only 1/16 of an inch long, tall, which is plenty. And I can check the profile right here just to make sure it's undercut. Okay, now I can go ahead and finish shaping this the rest of the way. I don't need, that's wrong. I don't need that much of a flat spot, so let's get rid of some of that. Something like that will be all right. And I can go ahead and shape this down to my line. So I'm just doing a shear cut right now. You can do a push cut if you want. And then just check your profile up here. Let's see how we're doing. So a shear cut is quick, but it doesn't always leave a good surface. And that actually doesn't look that bad. But if we had a little bit of tear out, we could do our push cut. And remember, careful of any blowout right here. Curve looks good. Curve looks good. Got a little line right there, so let's make that better. So I use just a curved scraper, negative rake scraper. And this will get rid of any tool marks, any bumps or humps. Got nice little shavings coming off. Did I get it all? Looks pretty good to me. How's that look? So, what time is it? Okay, I'm doing good. So I'm done with the bottom. Had a little hiccup right there. That's kind of a neat little design though. We'll take that. So that's my bottom. At this point, I would go ahead and I'd sand this up. I power sand. So I'd use a little 2-inch pad. I'd power sand that. I'd power sand the base. But don't power sand the bead. Hand sand the bead. Power sand removes wood real quickly, right? Which is great. But you can distort the bead like that and create a flat spot, and just, you know, it won't look like a bead anymore. So I always hand sand the bead, but I'll power sand these two surfaces. I sand up to 320. Then I'll have a spray bottle with water. I'll spray the surface to wet it and raise the grain. Let that dry. Hit it with 320 grit again to knock that raised grain down. And then plates are one of the only projects I make where I will put finish on the lathe. And if I get done in time, I'm going to show you how I do that. I like to use, just if you're asking right away, I like to use Odie's oil on the bottom of my plates. Odie's is like a hard wax oil, similar to your Osmo and Rubio. Although I've never used Osmo and Rubio, that's just what I've read. But I'll apply finish, and then after I put the finish on, wipe off the excess, then I reverse it right away. I don't let it dry or anything. I just reverse it. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my tenon in some jaws. Obviously not those jaws. Did you guys see my jaws over here? Everybody see my jaws? No, I don't. So I have some homemade mega jaws. So I have Vicmark chucks, and Vicmark makes chuck jaws up to 9-inch diameter, and they're 9-inch mega jaws. When this is down in almost a closed position, their 9-inch mega jaws will grip an 8-inch tenon. Hey, guess what? That happens to be an 8-inch tenon as well. The Vicmark jaws are $139. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, yeah, I'll buy some. And then I thought about it some more, and I thought, well, I've seen people online make their own wooden jaws. I'm going to give that a try. And I read an article in the AAW journal about some guy made his own jaws, and I said, couldn't find the article, but I said, let me give it a try. So gave it a try. So I just found some scrap wood, basically, measured out and drilled and countersunk some screw holes, cut it in quarters, slapped it on the chuck, and it works like a dream. It works great. I've since made wooden jaws for my lunch and my breakfast plates as well. Any of you guys going to be in the class tomorrow? We'll be using wooden jaws that you'll get to shape yourself. Now, are my wooden jaws as strong and accurate as the Vicmark Mega Jaws? Nope, but they work really well. I don't think I would ever use wooden jaws for turning a big salad bowl or anything, but for the plates, they seem to work great. They actually work great. I tried to size my recess so that I had a gap here that is not quite big enough. I tried to size it so that my calipers would fit down, darn it, so that my calipers would fit down in between the jaws. The way these calipers work, have you guys seen these calipers before? I don't know how to, I can't get my angle right. There we go, something like that. So these are not your normal figure 8 calipers. These are Andre Martel calipers. And if you notice, I got one leg here that's a lot flatter than the other side. And the way I tried to size this recess is so that these calipers would fit down in between the jaws when the plate's in place and let me measure the center thickness so that I wouldn't cut through the bottom. So this is the small size Andre Martel. This other side would be used for like a vase or a hollow form or something like, be used for like a vase or a hollow form or a deep turning like that. But this size but this side I just use for my plates. It lets me, this is about a 5.5 or 6 inch deep reach, so it easily will measure a dinner plate. This is the small size, sells for about $50. They make a medium size, which is about this big, for $100, and I use those for platters. And they make a large that's like this big for $150. I don't own those. I don't know why you would need anything. I don't turn anything that big. But there's only Christian Brice-Pierre. I know Trent mentioned Christian Brice-Pierre. He's going to be one of the demonstrators at the symposium. Christian used to own the Woodworkers Emporium in Las Vegas, and he used to carry the Andre Martel, but now he kind of closed up shop. He doesn't have them anymore. But there's a place in Canada, woodworkerspecialties.com, that sells all 3 different sizes of the Andre Martel calipers if you're interested. Woodworker Specialties. So unfortunately, I made my bead just a little bit smaller than I needed, so I'm not going to be able to fit my jaws, or I'm not going to be able to fit this down in between the jaws, so I'm going to have to show you another way to measure your bottom. Oh, not quite. So close, so close. Okay, which is fine because how many of you own a pair of Andre Martel calipers? 1, 2 people? So I'll show you another way to measure. Let me put those here. Huh? I love this. Yeah. I'm going to bring the tool rest up, or the tail center up, just so I can take a heavier cut. So we're going to start shaping the top here. Bring the tool rest up so I can take a heavier cut. I'm just going to remove some wood. I'm not going to take it down to my line. At this point, before I start doing that, I would remeasure my thickness, because sometimes you lose when you sand this surface. You know, before you reverse it, you might change that measurement just a little bit. So I'll check my measurement, and it's good. So I'm just going to get rid of some wood, and then we'll start hollowing it out. Oop. I thought I checked that. Obviously not. You can even hear when you're past all that rough stuff. Yeah, come on. Okay. So I've left a little bit of thickness, and this is gives me an opportunity to check the wood. I was just hogging it out, so I don't expect a clean surface. But now I've got enough room where I can, as I'm bringing it down to final thickness, if I need to use a different tool, a different cutting technique, I've still got some wood that I can do that with. And what I mean is, maybe this particular piece of wood likes a push cut. So I can practice my push cut right here. But remember, that's going into end grain, side grain, end grain. So it's usually doesn't necessarily always leave a good surface. Sometimes it does, but on this particular piece of wood, it doesn't like that. So I still got enough thickness. Let's try a pull cut. That's a much better surface. Likes that lots better. So we'll do that to take it down to final thickness. Now the other thing I like, this is just me, my design, I like a flat rim. So I like this part to be flat, but I do want it undercut just slightly. You can and you can make your rim wider. You can do put curves in it, whatever you want. But again, just for me, I want a flat rim, and I want it slightly undercut. And I'm slightly undercut already. So all I got to do is just take it down to final thickness. So since it liked the pull cut, we'll go ahead and do that. And I could shear scrape it if I want, so close the flute even more. Just like that. Okay, looks pretty good. That's my rim. Okay, now I'm going to mark for my width. And on my dinner plate, I make my rim width 5/8 of an inch. And again, you can make yours whatever size you want. I've kind of changed stuff over the years on my plates, some of my dimensions and stuff. I used to make a bigger plate. I used to make an 11-inch plate that had a 3/4 of an inch rim. Proportion-wise, it looked fine. One day, we store our plates in our upper cupboard. So, you know, the kind of cupboard that's got 2 doors with a center style. So you'd open up the door and our dinner plates would be right there. So one day I wanted to move those to the middle more to make room for some other plates. They wouldn't go. So they were hitting that center style. So I measured from the center style to the back of the cabinet is 10 3/4 of an inch. And I was making an 11-inch plate. So I said, well, that's not good. So I can't make a 10 3/4 inch plate because that's a 10 3/4 inch opening. So now I make a 10 1/2 inch plate. So it's more storage friendly, if you will. To compensate for the smaller size, 1/2 inch smaller size, I shrunk my rim just a little bit. So this size rim, I think this size rim works well and looks well with this size plate. Because I shrunk the rim, I still can hold as much food on my 10 1/2 inch plate as I could my 11-inch plate. So a lot of people online, you'll see them, they'll make a 12-inch plate, ooh, ah, and they'll put an 1.5 inch border on it, an 1.5 inch rim. So their 12-inch plate only holds 9 inches of food, if you want to think of it that way. My plates hold 9.5 inches, and they're more, you can store them, you know, different places are easier than the other 12-inch plate. So there is, even though my plates look simple, there's a lot of thought that goes into the design and shape and size. And besides, I asked my wife what kind of rim she liked, and I showed her a couple different ones, and she said this one, and I said, okay, thank you. All right, let's get rid of some wood. Okay, you guys holding your breath now? I don't have a tailstock in place, do I? I only have a 1/16 of an inch tenon. I have homemade wooden jaws. Oh, Lord, help us now. No face mask. Oh, thank you. I'll put it on. First of all, let's just look. So how true is that running? Pretty true, isn't it? Are you impressed? You should be. Even more so if it stays in place, right? Just a joke. Let's get rid of this nub. I know you guys are all holding your breath, aren't you? Waiting for that to come off. Okay, the way I hollow out the center is I'm going to start by making some grooves. Did you see it skate on me a little bit like that? Did you guys see the tool skate at all? It skates because I didn't have the flute closed. I had the flute open just a little bit, and it grabs and we'll pull it this way. So when you do this, make sure the flute is closed at the 3 o'clock position. Now, because we sure don't want this tool to skate and come across our rim. Jimmy Clues says if you're having a problem with that, just take a parting tool and just come in with your parting tool and give yourself those flat spots. And all those flat spots are for is to rest the bevel against for when I go to hollow it out. Now when I put the tool in the groove, I still have the flute closed, pointing at the 3 o'clock. And then you'll notice I just open it up a little bit to make the cut. Let's get rid of that a little bit more. But this is kind of a rough cut because I'm going into end grain. But I'm just trying to get rid of some wood here. Now, another difference between were you impressed? It stayed in the chuck, didn't it? Pretty rough cut because I was just hogging away wood. Another difference between a plate and a platter, a plate, in my opinion, should have a flat bottom. A platter, a lot of times, will have a curved bottom. You don't want a curved bottom on a plate because then all your food rolls to the center. So I want a flat center. So I have just a scrap piece of wood, just has a flat bottom on it, or a straight edge on it that I can just check and see how am I doing. I can also, this is where I would grab my calipers and stick them down and check my diameter or my thickness. But since I can't do that, the other way to check your thickness is just with your a gauge like this. If I have a 1 inch tall plate and if I have a 1/4 inch even thickness all the way through, how much of a recess should I have in here? 3/4 of an inch. So if I set this to 3/4 of an inch, got that in the wrong way. So if I set this to 3/4 of an inch, oops, moved on me. So now I can check my depth that way. I got a lot to go, don't I? All right. That's why my recess on the bottom, that's why I do a curve, and I do have about a 1/16 of an inch gap, so I do need to allow 3/4 minus a 1/16. Maybe like right here. Yeah, so I'll take that into account as well. Normally I don't have that. I don't have that unique design. But I know I can remove more wood than what I've got here. So let's go ahead and do another cut, and then we'll clean it up. Since I'm right here, let's clean up this rim. So right now the rim is straight across. Let me give it just a slight curve. And I'm just gonna use the lower wing and just scrape that. Larry, I saw you move a little bit there. You all right? You were just moving? Not as a result of my cut here, huh? And that's good. So some of you might think, well, why don't I just sand this? Just sand it a curve. Yeah, you don't want to do that. It depends on the wood, especially. Some woods, man, that sandpaper will just dig into that end grain real quick, and you'll just have a rough surface, so always cut it. Let's go ahead and take some more wood out of the center here. So I was trying to hog that out a little bit, so I'll slow down a little bit. Let me come to my mark here. So I had the flute closed. Now I got bevel support. I can open up the tool a little bit. Go a little bit deeper. Okay, that sounded pretty loud, didn't it? That was a loud cut. Let's try the bottom bowl gouge. And now we'll use the left wing and see how that cuts. Can you hear the difference? And I can tell I wasn't quite flat. I came up in the center, so let me do this again. Once the shavings pile up here, you can't really see what's going on, so I'm just watching how thick of a cut I'm making is all. And I'm just trying to move forward. I'm not moving the tool, I'm just trying to bend my knees and move forward to continue that cut. And just go real slow right here. You don't want to tear anything out. There. And the bottom bowl gouge will usually leave a real clean surface. Got a little nub right there, but there's no torn grain on that surface at all. It's nice and clean. And am I flat? Pretty darn flat. It's not rocking on me at all. I could check my depth. How am I doing on time? It's a little bit thicker than what it should be. Let's just do this real quick. Let's just check real quick. Yeah, that's too thick. One more cut. You guys have heard that before. Never have you. One more cut. It's all right. Just got to do it. Get some lines there because I'm trying to hurry. Let's take some of that off. My tool rest just a hair too low also. Okay. We'll call that good. So I got a couple lines in there. You guys can see that. My depth. There we go. How's that? Good. So if you're having trouble getting a flat surface, if you're having trouble with this tool, then nothing says you can't pick up your scraper again. I can clean up this rim. So if I had any bevel marks coming around that corner, I just got rid of those. I can come across. But now remember again, scraping won't give you as good a surface as cutting, but it can give you a flat surface. And you could pull it. Nothing says I can't come this way as well. Still got a little bit of mark there. I'll get rid of that. In the interest of time, though, I want to try and get to the Odies. Okay, I want to point out something. I don't know if you guys picked up on it or not. When you make a salad bowl, people tell you that you should leave mass in the center to support the rim, right? You guys have all heard that before? Leave all that mass in here while you work on the rim. Once you get the rim done, then you can remove this. I didn't do that though, did I? I took this all down in a couple different layers, but I took it all down at once. And that wasn't a problem, was it? And did my rim move? My rim didn't move. Why not? Because I've got support almost out to within an inch and a quarter of the rim. The people that will make a recess, that recess is usually about this big, and they're expanding the jaws into a recess that big. They've got all of that wood to move, right? I've got jaws out to here, so I've got an inch. It's not going to move. If it does, it's not even worth talking about. But that's what a big tenon will do for you, big jaws. The other thing I want to point out is if you've ever made a plate where you've gone too thin in the center, take it down like I did in a layer. I used to work on the rim, and then I'd try and flatten it out. I invariably would make it too thin in the center because I went too deep right here. But taking it down, doing those grooves that I did, and then taking it down in layers helps me take it down to an even thickness. And I'm going to say I haven't even come close to coming through the bottom once I take it down all together like that. So at this point, I would sand it. It's flat. I would use my scraper to get it flat if I wanted. I would sand the surface, but a tip with that is I power sand, but before I power sand, I always hand sand, okay? And I have literally, it's just a scrap piece of wood with some 16th inch cork stuck to it to cushion. And then and this is flat across the surface. I've rounded the edges just so when I come up like this, I'm not gonna leave a, dig in my rim. But I always will hand sand the bottom of this plate. And so I make some marks like this. You're getting sleepy. You want to pay me more money? Okay, maybe not. And then you can easily tell. So I can easily tell where I was high and where I'm low. I'm low right there. I'm hitting right in the center. This is a little bit low, and I'm hitting right there. So I would sand this until that's flat, or until all those marks are gone away. Now, I won't do that anymore because of you guys, but it just only takes a minute to get that surface flat. And now that it's flat, then I can power sand that. And now my power sand, my drill, all it has to do is just go across the surface and clean it up. You guys might be better sanders than I am, but whenever I try and remove dips and divots and make it flat with a drill, I just make things worse. So hand sanding gets it flat, and then you spend a minute with this and you save a lot of time with drilling with the drill. Then I'd sand it up through the grits, spray it with water, raise the grain, sand it again, and then apply Odie's oil. And if I have 5 minutes, I'll show you how I apply Odie's oil. So then I'm done with the plate. So at that point, I'm done with the plate. Any questions up to this point? You can pass that around if you want. Still a little bit thick, but it'll be okay. I have a plate that's all done. I've sanded the bottom. That's what my bottom normally looks like. Sanded the bottom, applied Odie's oil to it. I've turned the top, sanded it, raised the grain, sanded it back. It's all ready to apply Odie's oil. There, so that tenon is just a little bit bigger, and now that's how these are supposed to work. So those will fit all the way down into the center, and now I can check my thickness right there, and I shoot for 1/4 of an inch on a dinner plate. That's how those jaws are supposed to work. Okay. So, who's familiar with Odie's? Have you? I know Patrick is. Anybody else heard of Odie's before? Heard of it? Heard of it? Never used it? I would just use that to set stuff on. So Odie's is a tung oil based. It's got wax in it. I can't tell you the proportions. I can't tell you what kind of wax. They don't really make that well known to the public. Food safe, no chemicals, no chemical dryers in it, nothing like that. You don't need to wear gloves, don't need to wear a respirator. It's got a nice citrus smell to it. ODIE''S. Yes. Odie's makes 3 different viscosities, if you will, of oil. This is the original formula. They call it the universal, and it's real thick. It's like, I don't know if the camera shows it. It's like honey. Yeah, it's real thick. So you got to stir it up. I only will use the thick stuff on plates. It's much too hard, much more work to use it on bowls. If you were to take this original formula and thin it down about 50%, then you would come up with what they call the super penetrating, the super pen. So the super pen is about half the viscosity of this. If you take the super pen and thin that down, now you've got what they call the super duper. And it's kind of a funny name, but they say it's because it's super duper easy to apply. So super duper is a real thin consistency. It's about the consistency of a Danish oil. Wipe it on, let it sit for a few minutes, wipe it off. Because it's so thin, though, the super duper, because it's so thin, you should put on 2 coats. Because this is so thick, it only takes 1 coat. That's why I like to use it on plates. I just put on 1 coat, done.
So do they sell a thinner version?
Do they sell what?
Do they sell the thinner?
They do. They sell a solvent. Yeah, or you just buy it. They sell their super solvent. Or else you just buy the super penetrating or the super duper. When I do bowls, I use the super penetrating or the super duper.
What about
Smaller trays? Smaller turnings? Either or on that. The thick stuff, it's just with a bowl, big salad bowl, they're working it in forever and my arm gets tired. So I like to use a thinner version that doesn't take so much work. But it doesn't take much. And I don't know if the camera will zoom in on that. That should be way more than I need. I just dunked in my synthetic pad a little bit. That's more than I need. Let's just take some of that off. And let's try that. So let's try that much right there. The very first time you use this, guaranteed you're going to use more than you should. And I say that because that's what you're used to doing right now. Whatever finish you use right now, you're used to flooding it on the surface, and you keep flooding it on, keep flooding it on, and you're just used to using a lot, but not with the Odie's oil. A little goes a long way. Use a synthetic pad, and this is a white pad, which is no grit. They come in different colored synthetic pads, which are different grits. So if you want to, I've got a maroon there, and I've got gray. I wouldn't use the green. That's just too coarse. But the other pads, they have a little bit of a grit. If you want to think of this as wet sanding type of applying the finish, that's fine. But just that little bit. And the key to Odie's is just use a little bit and just work it in and work it in. What's nice about this synthetic pad is it kind of, it holds the finish, and so it goes a long way. You can turn the pad over, you know, because as you push on it, it kind of forces the finish to the other side. And you just work it in and work it in. Then you let it, after I've worked it in, and I could use the lathe a little bit if I wanted to help me apply it, just put it on low speed. Once you work it in, let it sit for 30 minutes to 60 minutes, and then buff off the excess. So if you, the jar here says buff it in and buff it off. And the key is just work it in, work it in. If you use too much finish, it's just it's a booger to get it to buff off. Oh, so much better. Sorry, Mahoney's oil is a walnut oil, and that's it. It's just a walnut oil. This is so much more durable. Walnut oil doesn't have any kind of a sheen to it. This will have a little bit of a sheen. It's got UV protectants in it. Odie's oil can be used on wood, plastic, glass, metal, concrete, brick. It's used commonly on wood floors as well. So I figure if it'll stand up to wood floors, you know, a plate or a bowl is no problem at all. And nothing against Mahoney's oil, but I will say that the only salad bowl at home that I've had to refinish, that's not true, was one with Mahoney's oil. After about 10 years, I finally refinished one of my other salad bowls that I'd used Danish oil on it. I've only been using Odie's for about 5 years. I've been using Danish oil for almost 20 years. So that's it. So I would buff it on, or put it on. I let it sit for 30 to 60 minutes. And did I bring some paper towels? We don't have 30 to 60 minutes, but we're going to pretend we do. So I'll take a clean paper towel. We're going to pretend that's been sitting. I'm going to wipe all the excess off that hasn't soaked in, but I'll be honest with you, after 30 to 60 minutes, there's not going to be much that you can wipe off. Okay, then I can use the lathe. Get a clean towel. Keep finding a clean spot on your towel to clean this off and buff it off. And what you're doing is you're taking it off the surface. You got to trust that there's still finish in the pores, and you're taking it off the surface. When I get done buffing it here, it'll be dry to the touch. There's still finish in the pores. You got to let that cure for at least 3 days before you wash it. A little bit, yes, which will help drive the oil into the pores, and it helps dry it on the surface as well too. I don't try and do heat with it. I just will spin it with real low speed just to help distribute and just work it into the surface. But I'm not trying to build up heat when I apply it. You know, after a couple years, it's still going strong. I haven't had to reapply any more finish to the surface. It's still protecting. Water just beads up like you just got done waxing your car. If you did have to reapply oil or reapply more finish to it, just reapply it. You don't have to scuff the surface. You don't have to sand it all off. Just apply more Odie's. And all of the different viscosities, the super penetrating, super duper, this one, they bond with each other. So I could put on a coat of universal, and then 5 years down the road I could put some super penetrating or super duper on it. It would work just fine. Okay. And what's that? I did the back already while I was still in the tenon. I did that before I came here. And that's it. So now I would let this sit for 3 to 5 days, and and then you could wash it. You could use it right now. It's food safe. You could use it right now, but if you wash it right now, you're going to wash the finish off, which I didn't believe them, but I do now. And so I reapplied Odie's to a plate. I applied it to a plate. I used the plate that night. I washed it. Yep, okay, I guess they know what they're talking about. So I just reapplied Odie's, let it sit for 3 days. Water just beads up on the surface. But it gives a nice luster. It's not going to give you a gloss finish. They do make a wax, a wood wax, a wood butter. But I've just started playing with the wax a little bit. But to be honest, just the Odie's works okay, as you know, just like that. And it's dishwasher safe one time. Yeah, that's what I tell customers. You can put my salad bowl or my cutting board in the dishwasher one time, and that's it. But yeah, it's a good finish. Otherwise, any other food safe finish is fine. I would not use shellac because that's a film forming finish. I would not use lacquer. I would not use polyurethane because those will all just create a film on the surface. So any kind of a penetrating oil finish. Danish oil is fine. Mahoney's is fine. You just have to reapply Mahoney's more often. What's that? Tried and true. What's that? Where do I sell my kitchen heirlooms? On my, really through Etsy, Colorado Kitchen Heirlooms. I have an Etsy website. Thanks for the plug. Oh, thanks. Do not even ask me about mineral oil. That is a 4-letter word as far as I'm concerned, as far as finishing. There are so many other finishes out there on the market that are much, much better than mineral oil. So that's all I have to say about mineral oil. You can talk to me after the demos.
It makes an okay lube.
It makes an okay lube. The problem with mineral oil, it doesn't really protect. You wash the plate, you've washed the finish off on it. It's a non-drying oil. You let the plate sit for 6 months. You pick it up and you're going to get oil residue on your hands. I don't want to put Mahoney's. I don't want to put mineral oil on a plate. Have the customer get a oil ring on their table after using it. So there's just much better finishes besides mineral oil. I know a lot of people use it because it's quick and easy. I'm gonna make some people mad when I say the only reason people are using mineral oil is because they don't know anything more about finishes. But there's a lot other finishes that are better than mineral oil. So that's all I have to say about that. What questions do you guys have about plates? You ready to go make one yourself? Make a set? Yeah. Good. I'll look for them next month then, right? In your show and tell? That's all I've got.
Thanks,
Thank
Pat.
you. Thanks.